I think that 2XKO is a pretty nuts game for the future of Riot. However that game does, whether it does really well or really bad or somewhere in between, I think it will influence how games get made at Riot in the future, or even those currently in development at Riot. Because to date, what we've seen with Valorant, 2XKO, and all the other leaked projects that we have, like Project L and Project T, what we see is that Riot takes a bloody long time to make anything. And we've got Riot veterans like Greg Street and Xeno referencing Riot's 10-year development cycles, which is super long, and 2XKO falls into this camp. It's a pretty good example of those super long development times that happen at Riot, because if you don't know, the team working on 2XKO was actually brought into Riot as an already established team. They were not created fresh, they were called Radiant Entertainment, and they were bought by Riot in 2016 and brought in to work on 2XKO. Radiant Entertainment got a game to technical alpha in just 3 years, which they put out in 2015, which is probably why Riot bought them. And despite Riot having loads more money and other resources that the team can use, including just brand, like you're going to get so many people wanting to work for you at Riot, it's taken them almost 3 times longer to get to that same technical alpha milestone. You would expect things to move quicker with all that extra money and brand reputation, not slower. So either 2XKO is just infinitely more ambitious than Rising Thunder, and there's a ton more in the game and that's why it's taking longer, or there's just something weird about Riot when it comes to making games, and for whatever reason, things just take 10 years over there. And I suspect it's a little bit of both. The quality we've seen from 2XKO already is insane, way higher than Rising Thunder. And just to articulate that, I have 2 friends who are both VFX artists who work at pretty well-known game studios. You would definitely know them. And they were gushing over how good Braum's abs looked for like 30 minutes, and just even more generally the game, saying that was super impressive or whatever. But I think it's one thing to impress a gamer who isn't familiar with how games get made, and we just see something and we go, that's pretty, that looks good. But to impress a game developer in the same line of work as you really shows that you're onto something special, like you've made something special. And 2XKO, I think, at this point in time, having watched it, is something special. At least visually, this game is beautiful. Although, perhaps that's to be expected, the game has been in development for 8 years already, and I'll come back to that in a second. The reason I think 2XKO is so important is because it's the first game that they'll be releasing after their big restructure from earlier this year, which is the one that murdered Riot Forge and kicked Legends of Runeterra out into the shed, and put Riot through a massive restructure to bring focus to the company and reduce costs. Dylan, the new CEO, he said that they'd gotten to a point of unsustainability, which is business speak for spending more money than you have. Even so, it's really clear that Riot's put a lot of money into 2XKO, which is a game that's targeting actually quite a small slice of the overall games market. And don't get me wrong, I do love the fighting game community. It's one of the most passionate and meme-producing communities out there. Whenever I go to Comic-Con or EGX in the UK, the fighting area is just perfect, like down to the last detail, is so good. If we do take a step back and just look at where the money in gaming can be earned from a business point of view, the fighting scene just isn't that big compared to other games, and it's also dominated by some really long-standing titles that people love and respect. And being a new entrant into the fighting scene feels like quite a difficult thing to do, which very well may be why it's taken 8 years to make that game already, which is already double the time it takes competitors to make those industry-leading games I just spoke about in that fighting game genre, or even some of the biggest games outside the genre. The point is, it's a lot of time and money to spend on a game that's aimed at a small section of the overall games market, which means Riot is either really banking on 2XKO destroying the competition and becoming a long-term staple of the fighting game scene, we can only hope, or hoping that 2XKO will bring a bunch of non-fighting game players to the genre and actually grow that market by just existing within it on the brand of League of Legends alone, which arguably is kind of what Riot did with League of Legends 15 years ago in 2019, not existing on the brand, it didn't exist then, but to bring players to the genre by being so accessible and giving people the ability to play the game without having to invest any money. But on the topic of game development time, you might think, well, other studios also take 8 years to make their games. That is true, but they don't have 7,000 people working there like Riot does. I work in games, I work in a big AAA studio actually, you definitely know where I work, and they have just over 200 people. NetherRealm, who make a new Mortal Kombat game every 4 years or so, as well as other games, also only has around 200 people. And yeah, they're part of Warner Bros. Games, but that's still only just over 1,000 people in total. Riot is 7 times that size. Riot is massive. And whether you, dear viewer, think this is a problem or not doesn't really matter, because the new head of Riot does think it's a problem. It's why he laid off so many people at the start of the year, and it's why he restructured his business to get games out quicker. So why has it been like this? Well, I think it's got everything to do with League of Legends. Most studios have limited money that will only last so long before it runs out, and you have to get a game out with that money. If you don't, you die. The business crumbles. This inevitably leads to really difficult decisions, usually around quality, which we then experience as bugs when we buy new games and things like that. It is not easy. The difficult reality of most game studios is that they just have a finite amount of cash and they have to make something with that money. How do you make the best game possible with just 36 months? It's very difficult. But with League of Legends bringing in huge amounts of money every year, Riot hasn't really had to worry about that stuff. They have the freedom to just work on games forever and take all the time they need to do whatever it is they want to do, because Sugar Daddy League is just bankrolling them every year. That game brings in billions a year. Billions with a B. It's insane amounts of money. I'll put something on screen to try and represent how much £1 billion is. It's insane money. Hello, dear viewers. I'm on lunch at work, and I was looking into this £1 billion claim that I was talking about. And if you take £1 billion coins like this, it's actually a euro, but I don't have a pound coin, but yeah, you know, if you take 1 billion of these and go to the tallest building in London, which is the Shard, roughly 300 meters high, and you were to stack them on top of each other and then push these coins over next to the tallest building in London, the Tower of Coins would hit France. That's how big we're talking. This is a lot of money. But to bring this all the way back to Braum's abs, they do look good. But does it change the game enough to warrant spending, say you've got 6 months on Braum's abs? Is that the right thing to do? Maybe, maybe not. This is art. It's all subjective and there's no right answer here. Maybe those 6 months could have been spent on, I don't know, more character animations or an achievement system or Twitch integration or something. Someone has to make the decision on what they should spend their time and money on. But if you're Riot Games and you have so much money, then you can just do all of those, like no problem. You don't have to balance anything. You can just do everything. And I think that's what happens, and I think that's why Riot takes so long making games, because they're just free to iterate forever. The thing is, though, League of Legends isn't going to last forever. One day it will stop making money, and if Riot is to survive as a company, then it needs other products to pick up the financial slack when League of Legends falls off in the late game, so to speak. Now, does that mean that League of Legends is in the process of dying? No, probably not. It just means that League and Valorant can't accommodate 7,000 staff working on a bunch of random stuff forever without releasing anything. They do need other products to be making the money. And this is why I think 2xKO is more important than it might just appear on the surface. Hypothetically, if 2xKO does hit its targets and it does do well, then it validates these 10-year-long development cycles that focus on that painstaking attention to detail and constant iteration. It justifies spending literally twice as long on a game than your competitors do in the same genre, because that's how you dominate a genre. And other teams in Riot will be able to leverage the success of 2xKO for their own games, arguing that the extra time and money that they need to, I don't know, like polish a Nat's forehead or Braum's abs in this case, is in fact worth it. Because that kind of attention to detail will lead to a more successful game. But if 2xKO does not hit its targets and it does not do well, then it brings into question the value of spending 10 years working on a single game, and will reinforce the idea that Riot does, in fact, need more focus to get new games out the door and into players' hands quicker than they do today, dropping the ones that don't gel with players and feeding the ones that do, which is what they did with LOR. And no matter how much money and love went into LOR, that game wasn't a winner, financially speaking. Not every game can be. But what are your thoughts on this? I'd love to hear them. I think this side of games is mega interesting. And if you have no thoughts, actually just leave a comment, because hey, that helps me out. I am a small channel. I don't make videos very often. That would be wonderful. But thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.